Hello everyone, my name is Reader Ward and today I'm going to be talking about how I broke my 3D printer and what you can do to fix yours if you did something similar to what I did. Essentially, I forgot to glue down the last part I was trying to print and I wasn't watching my printer, and so a bunch of plastic built up in the nozzle and got burnt by the nozzle itself and kind of got stuck in there and ruined a lot of the parts. So as you can see, all that PLA plastic that's in there is all discolored and burnt because a lot of it was touching the brass nozzle and got all over the back fan, which is part of the cooling system, and just a lot of the mechanical parts, and just got stuck to them. I couldn't find anything any chemical really that could get rid of it. So I was kind of wondering what's next. How do I get this off, or how do I get my 3D printer up and working? So first thing I did is just take apart the nozzle completely and salvage the parts that I could salvage that didn't have plastic burnt on it. And the most important thing I realized was save every screw, because you'll need them. They're all metric if you have the same 3D printer I have, which is the Ultimaker 2 Go printer. And the next thing you do is follow the wires and unplug them from the motherboard, which, if you don't know what a motherboard is, it's just a large printed circuit board that controls all the 3D printer motors and their movements and the heating element and the sensors and everything. So it's basically the brain of the machine. To do this, you need to remove all the screws on the side shown using the Allen wrench that probably came with your 3D printer, or you could buy an Allen wrench at just about any hardware store or even Walmart. And once you remove all of these screws, just take off the plate carefully and try not to lose any parts that might fall out. And once you do that, you'll see the stepper motors along the sides and a ton of wires and belts and pulleys. All these control the movements of the X, Y, Z axis movement of the printer, and also the feeding of the PLA plastic into the nozzle. So if you follow the wires, you'll see they lead down to the bottom of the printer, which goes to the motherboard itself, which will have a lot of connectors on it, which connect to any sort of sensor or just any wire that's on the printer. So as you see, I am just removing anything that is connected to the motherboard, and I have it color coded if you have the same printer as I do. Next thing to do is to remove the housing for the motherboard. Mine is made out of plastic, and you just kind of remove a couple of screws and pull out the tabs. And as you can see now, the motherboard is exposed, showing one massive complicated circuit. But we don't have to worry about that. The only thing we have to do is deal with the existing connectors that connect to the wires for the fans and temperature sensor and heater cartridge that are located on the printer nozzle. And for our convenience, Ultimaker made these connect to the motherboard just by some connectors and didn't actually solder them to the board or anything. So it's pretty easy to take it out. All I had to do is push those little orange tabs with an Allen wrench, and the wires popped right out. This specific wires, those two ones, are for the heater cartridge. Now if you tip it back over, zoom in a little bit, you can see, since I just unplugged the heater cartridge, now you can start pulling on it and it should snake back through the wire housing that goes to the back of the machine, you should be able to pull out the wires that connect to the heater cartridge and the temperature sensor, which I unplugged from the side of the machine first. Now, once I gather all my parts together, it's mostly little clamps and screws and nuts and bolts, nothing very complicated. These are the parts I was able to salvage, and that fan housing in the middle, as you can see, had a bunch of burnt plastic on it, so I couldn't really use that anymore. I was able to find some parts online, and I also had this little pack that came with my printer that had the temperature sensor in it and a few pieces of our hardware. I bought this fan housing online also, and the heater cartridge online, and a couple of the mechanical pieces and brackets and things that go on the printer itself. They're actually not too bad of a price. I found a Chinese company that buys Ultimaker 2Go's and just disassemble them and sell the parts for not too bad of a price. So it was a much better alternative than buying a new $300 Ultimaker nozzle, which is the only option Ultimaker has on their website for the most part. So now, once you have all the parts, you start assembling them. First thing to do is to take the brass nozzle block and screw it onto this little steel piece. I'm not sure what to call it. But you screw it on, and I forgot to mention you put it through the bracket hole, and also take your heat sink, which is basically a metal piece to disperse heat. If you don't know what that is, it's the little piece that I was showing you that you need to screw on there. And next, you take your heater cartridge, open it up, get it ready, and plug that into the same exact connectors on your motherboard that you unplugged the old heater cartridge from. And so the quickest way I found that to get this to work is take some tweezers for these connectors and pull the little tab on top, and it should pop out of the board. That way you can get to the holes for the wires. And with the actual wires, you just shove them in there as far as you can and bend them into an L shape on the outside of the connector, and they just kind of stick in there pretty well. The little orange tabs will hold them in, and you just shove it back onto the motherboard, and it should have a good connection. After that, you snake the wires back through the wire holder, take the temperature sensor, plug it into the same exact place you found your temperature sensor plugged into. For me, mine was plugged into the part marked temp 1. As you can see, there's 3 slots for temperature sensors. I'd recommend just putting it in the same one that they use, just in case they programmed it to take the digital readout of that one connector. Keeping things the same makes it a lot easier. And then just reassemble the side, screwing all mechanical hardware back together and the big plate that kind of holds everything in place and protects the wires from being exposed. This is all done just using an Allen wrench and screws, some metric screws. Make sure to carefully line every single tab as you do this and shove it in completely into its slot. After that, you should have all these wires exposed with the heater cartridge, the temperature sensor, and the connectors for the fans, as well as a Bowden tube with plastic sticking out of it, hopefully. The next thing you do is align these two axes for the axis bracket, and essentially those two roller looking things, and line it up, and it should slide right on. Just make sure you keep them flush with the outside of the plastic bracket, and simply put the other plastic brackets with the long thumb screws and insert them into the 4 thumb screw holes, and it should all hold together pretty well. Next thing you do is start putting the mechanical hardware on the bottom, which holds the actual nozzle, and I'll show you how I put it together. You put it on the left side, and you just screw it back together. One of my screws is sticking down because I had the wrong size screw, but it had the right thread on it, so it doesn't really matter because it's not affecting my nozzle and it's not sticking past it. So I should have a functional printer as soon as I plug in the rest of the wires and insert the temperature sensor and heater cartridge back into the nozzle block. So as you can see, you then insert the wires kind of into that little space that they give you and try to pull them through as you put the fan housing on and screw it on. And then you should be all done and have your 3D printer back together. Enjoy my quick little show reel of my 3D printer back up and running. For more videos about 3D printers, or if you have any questions, comments, please comment below or email me at readerward2@gmail.com. Thanks for watching and subscribe for more.